that, how he understood the question of revolution, that it was necessarily violent, and it was a priority in terms of organizing organizing activities. I don't hear that in our discussion. I would like to hear how the panelists feel about that.
Can I get 3 sets of questions so I can get 2 women's voices in here?
Okay.
Yes.
This sister and this sister.
I had 2 questions, and some have already come to light. One, I wanted, Maulana, if you would continue that whole discussion of the humanizing of Malcolm, because it puts humanity like on another level that he was not at, and only by this expression, all the negative expressions, does he then become human. You know, and then Cheryl had started speaking on that too. You know, because in your paper, I know you deal extensively with that whole deconstruction of making Malcolm more human. And then the second question was I wanted you all to raise, because you've already raised the exclusion of women you thought should be included. But I was concerned with the women that were included and their portrayal, their presentation as one-sided, negative black women. And I wanted to...
Many of them, he criminalized a lot of black people.
Right, I mean, you know...
Almost no white person is criminalized in the book. He criminalized every black person.
It's another pathological presentation of the black woman again, so I wanted to do that.
Please note those questions. That one was...
Yeah, I wanted to comment to you, Eric. The Occupy movement, which is right now the Great White Hope, and this conference is more or less built around it, is absolutely infected with racism and sexism. It's not just white supremacy, it's white male supremacy. And I interviewed several young women who are active in the movement for a book I've written on women's history and Occupy. And exactly what you encountered, I recorded in my book, that when a woman spoke to one of the white guys that run basically the General Assembly about excluding women, he said women are not an economic category.
Right.
Foregoing the fact that 1 in 3 or 1 in 2 women in this country sinks into poverty, and black women and minority women are like 40 million. So that's a real problem with this movement that's being so touted as a whole.
Is there another woman whose hand I didn't get to yet before we start answering these?
Come on now.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, brother, you get your question, and that's going to be the last question, unfortunately, because we're running close to time.
Yeah, okay. First, I would like to thank the brother for raising that whole question of the black women who played important roles in Malcolm's life. I've met some of them, Queen Mother Moore, his sister Ella Mae, you know, Thomas, you know, Collins' brother. But the question that came up earlier about how do you use Malcolm X and his influence as an organizing tool. And I may be one of the only a few people in there who was a member of us in Los Angeles. The point is that you remember, Maulana, how we passed out flyers to high school students and asked them to take off.
We took them out.
And they came out, and after about a year, the school system just gave up and just let them have the day off.
That's right.
Every year out here, we take pilgrimages to Malcolm X's gravesite from the Harlem State Office building. I'm just giving you examples of how you have to keep his name out there and continue to study his teachings and his influence, because the magnitude, you know, is so great. But especially, you know, for young people, we seem to have forgotten some of the lessons that we had developed in the 1960s, you know. I was at the first, I think, right after Malcolm's death. Remember we had the program, you and Bill Green and Muriel Overdelli. And Los Angeles right on. You know what I mean? The community was on it. And that's what you have to do. And continue to do that. Maulana may like to expand on it a little further, but these were lessons that we developed in the 1960s.
But the thing, let me just say about the relevance of Malcolm X today. See, we said this in Trinidad at the conference we had there. I know people trying to do careers and get the PhD and tenure and stuff like that, so we got to use big words with Malcolm X used to talk about. But Malcolm X's great gift was to take a 5-volume work and break it down into a poetic statement. And that's what we need to do instead of like putting people to sleep with great theory right? Malcolm really broke a lot of that stuff down, and we have to take those insights. And I mean, Malcolm's analysis of reformism, you know, that whole Novocaine metaphor he used there and stuff like that. I mean, he's showing you. So that style is the style that we need to use. And so even with Black Power and Black Liberation Studies, we need to take it from the Ivy Leagues and lost at Columbia University and archives and bring it back to these communities. And part of it is the language. And we come back with this corny language, which in many ways, by not digesting that and retranslating it, we're saying we don't really understand many of these ideas about political economy today, that we're dealing with stuff like that. We have to be able to talk to people in a language that they understand, and we'll find we educate ourselves better by talking to our own communities about these issues. Now, to these questions here, this will be the last round, and then we have to go to the next struggle up here. And where's that other room there? West 211? 211? Right, so in any order you want it, you've got these.
Oh yeah, well, so real quick, and these would be my parting words. Yes, so Sister, thank you. Yes, I agree that in terms of the way that Marable, the women that are discussed in the biography are framed in one-dimensional terms, pathological, absolutely. I mean, the way Ella Collins is dealt with, right? I mean, really quite disrespectful.
It's very disrespectful the way he dealt with
Yeah.
The way he dealt with his wife.
Yeah, his wife. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll stop. Yeah, I'll
As if
stop
the
there.
work she was doing wasn't important.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
Yes, that's right.
I actually, as I said to Eric a little earlier, my emotional relationship with the project I did has prevented me from reading the entire book yet. I've read parts of it, so I don't want to comment on the book itself.
All right.
I'll eventually.
Quick. Bill Sells' question first, the question of armed struggle.